Suddenly, John seemed to lose consciousness. Then Paul asked excitedly, "John, how are you?" Then the screen grew until John began to filter, and suddenly John's eyes turned into something I could only describe with a limited dictionary: LSD acid tore pictures, strange colors. 10 seconds after John's sour face hardened, something appeared. I picked up the disc and went back to see what it was. What I saw was a horrible and strange photo of a real man with a ventriloquist doll. The scary part of the look is that the person holding the doll doesn't have a mouth. Instead, there was blood on his face where he should have had his mouth. The doll burned in his eyes, a crazy smile. After looking, I had to vomit. Then the screen returns to the obvious scene, which is as disgusting as John's face. "How are you?" Ringo asked. "Vision is incredible, vision can kill." John's tone was dull and straight, as if in a trance. John quickly returned to reality and shook his head. Yes, I do. "What time is it, George?" "It's 1:13, George replied carelessly. Then the screen darkens and blood begins to drip. But this blood sounds more real than anything I've seen in other episodes. It looks so real that when I touch the screen, I inexplicably inject blood. The bloodshed quickly subsides, and another scene of the Beatles going to the lake soon fades away. Soon a group of girls began to follow them for about a minute, and suddenly a picture of a blind girl appeared on the screen. It was a real black and white photo, only blood flowing from the eye sockets. He has no teeth and more blood flows from his mouth. After seeing him, I jumped on the couch again. Then the screen goes to John's face. Suddenly, the crowd stopped shouting. When the four turned to check, all the fans were on the ground, gleaming. Apparently stoned, Paul asked, What happened?" The scene then showed Ringo spitting red vomit with pieces of brown meat. Something caught my attention. I stopped and looked carefully at the vomit on Hitler's face. I was a little surprised that the guy who killed millions and soldiers was in a cartoon about the Beatles. "Forget it," John shouted sharply. "How are our fans?" "I don't mind." I was surprised because John was cursed in this episode. But I decided to continue. The next scene shows the building to be demolished. As the Beatles walked down the street, a destructive bomb hit the building. A piece of debris fell into the air. He was about to miss a man, and John did something wrong. In typical John's style, he continued to push the man toward the dump. In the next second, a strong marble crushed and killed the man. Blood and brain flew everywhere. Although the brain is important and the blood still looks like a cartoon, it is very scary. Soon a group of people surrounded the stage and a bad smile appeared on John's face. The next scene simply shows a black screen. The only thing he heard was gunshots. Then there is the smoke that represents the weapons. The screen then turns off for studio shooting. The studio lights were off, which made the screen too dark to capture anything. But there was a quiet murmur. I listened intently, and I heard someone whisper, "I shouldn't have done that. They'll know soon enough." Then a light went out. There is a shadow on the edge of the door. This is a picture of John. It wasn't long before the light was reflected by the studio's sound director, dead. I quickly brought the two together and saw that John had hit the man and for some reason had a gun in his hand. The camera was thrown out of the room. The model M1887 fell to the ground, splattered with blood, and there was still some smoke coming out of the chimney. The next scene is Paul, George and Ringo knocking on John's door. Ringo then kept knocking on the door with his trademark strong sex bug legs, where there was a giant pickup truck-sized safe. They don't know what the combo is, but for some reason it doesn't quite turn off. They exposed John's secret: he's a Satanist. There was the corpse of a pentagonal woman with blood drawn from her body and unable to open her eyes. Dead Animals is a fan-made Necronomicon featuring a goat skull on a pentagram. George fell to the ground in fright. Paul had to vomit again. Ringo ran to the corpse and shouted, "Jenny, I'm not engaged." That scream. Then he closed his eyes and fell to the ground. Then Ringo burst into tears. Ringo's cry is not like the usual cartoon cry. It sounds as real as the day. I found out that the woman who died of shock was Ringo's fiancée Jenny. I didn't know Ringo was engaged, but I decided to continue. Suddenly, a girl's twisted screams began to sound in the background. I began to suspect that Jenny was screaming. The screen goes black. Then the screen shows the setting sun at John's feet. The picture immediately came to John's face. That face was crazy, and the mouth was moving fast. Her left iris is red. His cock looked like it was ripped apart by a raccoon. A rope was tied around his neck. He's about to kill himself. He closed his eyes and jumped up. Cameras show John's legs still wiggling. At the beginning of the episode, zoomed in shows John's lifeless body hanging from a small rock in the lake where the Beatles used to hang out. The screen dims and Paul appears with a sad expression. Then the screen went black again. Then the scary part begins. Without warning, surreal eyes appeared on Paul's face. There's so much footage of Paul's face, it's as if he's been pushed into a corner. Then the image appeared. I remember seeing a hand with a gun pointed at a little boy's head, but the gun was already firing. Another image of a garbage fish in a river appeared on the screen. The next image is a city on fire. People died on the ground. I soon discovered that the city had been destroyed in the attack. Destroyed by the Vietnam War. The next photo is of 3 coffins and 7 coffins with children under the age of 6. Behind the left body is a coffin with a hand in it. And that is only manual. After more photos, it showed Paul's face before the horrific slideshow. Then all of a sudden I heard a very deep voice saying, "Do this." Then Paul's M1911 Colt appeared. He put it in his mouth and pulled the trigger. Royal blood and brain matter are everywhere, as in Meadows and Abyss. The camera then zooms in on the capsule of the bullet that hit Paul, as well as the one with the weird Russian accent. "Life is over, Paul," he said. The next scene shows George committing suicide on a rock in the same lake. He also planned to commit suicide. I thought they were going to throw him off a cliff. Instead, he drew his pistol and shot himself. Very anticlimactic. At the end of the scene, the camera zooms in on the gun that Paul used when he killed himself. It takes 2 bullets to kill 2 Beatles. This scares me a bit. It froze under my spine. I mean, guns can't talk. The next scene is Ringo in the hospital, dying of an unknown illness. She took photos of him and his fiancée, and the engagement ring she gave him. He died. The scene then fades as the ending music plays. About a minute later, another shot was fired, in what appeared to be a dark hallway. All I heard was screaming, whistling, screaming and gunshots. I soon discovered that the room was in a prison. The scary thing is that every time the lights flickered in the hallway, a black masked figure would appear. It didn't take long. I found out it was John, with grey skin and red irises, and for a split second I thought he looked a lot like the webcomic's signature character Carcat Vantas. He yelled, "I hope you have a good time. Because my life is over, including my friends, because of me." John. Behind him is a group of guards and prisoners. Some of them reportedly had bullet holes in their heads and blood all over their bodies. In the crowd, I was able to recognize a few people wearing grotesque Beatles drawings, like John F. Kennedy, Abraham Lincoln and Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria. The really strange thing is that the prisoner next to John is Mark David Chapman. What scares me is that the man that Lucy killed Lennon was actually behind the evil cartoon Lucy. 30 seconds later, Lucy and a group of prisoners and guards started walking in a straight line as if they were walking towards me. The further they advanced, the more blood seemed to fall on them. Lucy begins to become new. And then the episode finally ended. I go back and keep rewinding the opening credits to believe how dumb I was to believe that the Beatles cartoon could have a great episode. Soon, something caught my attention. I looked carefully at the bottom of the word because I paused to discover that the episode was actually called The Beatles Cartoon, They Died Because of John. He was about to remove the tape when the VCR suddenly caught fire. I got my mom unplugged and a fire extinguisher right away. We put out the fire and found that somehow the VCR was still okay because we put in more tapes and they managed to work. But the only thing that was destroyed by the fire was the tape, and it was the tape that started the fire. Disappointed mom and I went back to the collector's store and returned the tape. The store counter staff asked, "What happened to the tape?" When the tape ended, it lit up, I said. He roughly grabbed the tape from my greasy little hands and tossed it in the trash. All I can say is, bye.